Hope for hoops. Michigan may hold the key. Tasting rooms, DTC, and winery success will explain. Taste the limestone, smell the slate, the book, movie and miniseries to follow. All that and more on this episode of This Week Uncorked. Well, hello and welcome to episode 53 of This Week Uncorked for Monday, June 21st, 2025. I'm Brett Martin from Cork and Journey. That's your number one source for Corkage information. We also have winery reviews, wine reviews, restaurant reviews, regional wine guides, and so much more. Let's get right on into this week's news. Cava. It's not just for breakfast anymore. Starting off with the wine news, really cool story that I stumbled across from the Wine Bulletin. Basically, Joe Campbell reports on a Michigan court ruling that struck down unconstitutional zoning laws by a peninsula township. Huge victory for a dozen or so small wineries that had been basically suing the township, saying, look, these laws are adversely affecting our ability to make a living. And this has got huge national ramifications. But quickly from the article, on July 7th, 2025, after an 11-day bench trial and more than a decade of petty harassment and arbitrary zoning rules, U.S. District Judge Paul Maloney delivered a message that echoed far beyond the cherry orchards and tasting rooms of northern Michigan. Maloney ruled overwhelmingly in favor of a dozen small wineries, declaring the Peninsula Township zoning laws were unconstitutional, anti-competitive, and flat-out abusive, and he awarded millions in damages. Follow this up with one of my favorite wine reporters over at Wine Searcher, W. Blake Gray, wrote an article warning that Napa County's long-standing agricultural preserve law, which mandates at least 75% of local grapes usage, restricts events, visitor activities. We've talked about this a lot about the Hoops lawsuit. Oh no, you can't have tastings you can't do this, nothing can be granted, all the kind of crazy laws they have. Well, it turns out that the same lawyers that represented the small wineries in Michigan have decided to go after Napa as well. So from the article, a group of 11 wineries, that's the old Mission Peninsula, they won $50 million in damages, kind of get a specific amount now, by suing the Peninsula Township over its restrictive zoning laws, many of which are very similar to Napa County's. The wineries got this money even though the township, realizing it was not going to win the lawsuit, repealed its zoning laws in 2022. So it's like, too bad you changed the laws. Guess what? You screwed these people for so many years, you're going to pay. So anyway, now that same law firm that represented the Michigan wineries is representing the Napa Valley wineries, Smith Madrone Vineyards and Winery, Summit Lake Vineyards, and Hoops Vineyard, which we've talked about at length on previous shows, in a same federal lawsuit against Napa County. Couple little hurdles here. There's another, Hoops has got a whole nother lawsuit going on. They're going to let that one settle out. And then they're basically going to come after Napa for their crazy zoning restriction laws. It should be quite an interesting time. And I'll tell you what, I'm praying that they're successful, because a lot of these small wineries, they could really use the help. In a completely different story, but one that does kind of tie into this, the Seattle Met, don't know how I found this publication, Sean P. Sullivan explores how Washington's wine scene is evolving, highlighting basically these urban offsite tasting rooms and how they're kind of popping up all over the place, and how the direct-to-consumer model is really helping these small wineries. What I found interesting, I'll read this from the article, and we'll kind of tie this together maybe to what we're talking about with Napa and the Michigan case. By law, wineries must sell to distributors, which then sell to resellers and restaurateurs. However, a wave of consolidation in the retail and distributor industries left mom and pop producers with far fewer places to peddle their wine. Washington's 2011 liquor privatization initiative also gave big box wineries and retailers an upper hand on the retail shelf over smaller businesses. Enter DTC, direct-to-consumer sales, where wineries don't need to deal with distributors or retailers unless they want to. A 2017 Washington state law turbocharged the change, increasing the permitted number of off-site tasting rooms from 2 additional locations for each business to 4. Winery satellites started to spring up all over, including the Interstate 5 corridor near Seattle. In other words, not just primarily in Walla Walla and Woodinville. So it's interesting here, and that what has really helped these wineries grow is that there was a limitation. You could have a tasting room at your winery, and you could have one other. And now it's like, no, you could have up to 4 tasting rooms. How this can even be regulated is beyond my comprehension. It seems to me like, hey, I want to put a tasting room all over the place. If I want to pay the rent, hire the people and do it, I should be allowed to. But anyway, this has really helped them. It's really taking off. Maybe some other small wineries can follow suit. All right, and wrapping up the news, Decanter Magazine, David Crosley over there has a book review from Alec Maltman's new book, Taste the Limestone, Smell the Slate, praising the clear-eyed dismantling of the myth that wine flavors are literally reflected in minerality. Basically, this author, famous guy, he's part of one of the contributors to the Oxford Companion of Wine. He's written many wine books. He is saying, no, probably not the case. So from the article in the book, Taste the Limestone and Smell the Slate, it's a reaction to the rise of minerality, the pseudoscience thrown around in the wine world, tying geology to what ends up in the glass. Basically, he makes a pretty fierce attack here, and warning for readers, a spoiler cometh, it's mostly nonsense. You aren't tasting Cornigian chalk in your Chablis, a flint in that fine Pouilly Fumé, or clay, even that special blue clay in your Pomerol. Yes, bedrock and soil influence viticulture in various ways, but it's far less nuanced than you might suppose. At least that is the author's conjecture here. I don't know. I've talked to a lot of people that have amazing palates, and they swear that they're tasting some of that soil in their glass. So I'd love to hear what you think. Are you tasting soil in the glass? Are you not? Are you tasting that terroir in what you're drinking? I kind of think you are. Curious to read the book and see what his opinion is. Now with that, let's get right on into our wine and winery of the week. All right, we're going to head down to Santa Barbara County, more specifically Solvang, to the Lucas Lewellen tasting room right there on the main drag in Solvang. We like this place. We probably drop in there every single time we visit Solvang. Their wines are all over the map as far as quality, I think, but they do have some real hidden gems. Their prices are fantastic as well. You can't really go wrong, but I mean, you're going to find, I think we consider most of them to be kind of in the mid to high 80s, but then they've got a few that come into the nice, 90s. So worth trying if you're down there. They'll just stop into their little tasting room. They got a little private area in the back if you're a member. Very, very nice. If not, beautiful outdoor seating, nice little indoor seating, and they're hard to miss right on the main drag in Solvang, a place you want to check out if you were there, and that's Lucas Lewellen. And for our wine of the week, we're going to go with the Lucas Lewellen 2020 Hidden Asset Red Blend, a whopping $31, and we rated it 93 points. This is basically a blend of Malbec, Merlot, Syrah, Petit Syrah, a little bit of Cab Franc. Comes in at about 14.5% alcohol. Pulled from multiple vineyards across Santa Barbara County. Basically, their winemaker just pulled some blocks from some various vineyards, vinified them separately, blended them all together, and it is a hidden asset. And at $31, it's kind of a bargain. So if you're at the tasting room, try the hidden asset, maybe pick up a couple bottles. You can't go wrong. With that, we're going to move on to our restaurant and Corkage of the week. All right, we're going to go from Solvang to Las Vegas, off-strip in a casino. This is Anthony's Prime Steak and Seafood in Henderson, Nevada. It's actually in the M Casino. It's on the ground floor, views overlooking the pool. They've got several restaurants in this resort. Anthony's is their Prime Steakhouse and Seafood Restaurant. Elegant dining, very well done. They have a $25 per bottle corkage fee that applies across all the restaurants at the resort. Anthony's does have a 450 bottle wine selection, and the Wine Spectator has given it a nice award for that, recognized them for their wine list as well. Wine is reasonably priced, so another bonus you've got there. So if you're off Strip, you're kind of south of the Strip, you're at the M, about 15 minutes before you get to downtown, you're hungry, you haven't quite made it into you've been driving, well, pull off into the M, go to Anthony's Prime Steakhouse, check it out. Reasonably priced, great wine list, you can't go wrong. And with that, guys, we're going to wrap up the show for this week. Tina and I are still on the road for another 40 days or something like that, so I think the next show's going to be coming to you from London, I think. Anyway, till next week, cheers.